conversations, and I was telling you my paternal have some roots going back together. And in the audience, welcome very, very much to Conversations. Guest for this hour is Christopher Strunk. And he is a person that we don't even have any identifying logo up with him, because he said, let's just introduce him as Christopher Strunk, and I'll do that, and then we'll get into a conversation about the many things you're interested in. So good to see you again, Chris.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Now you have very strong opinions about the state of the world, and as I understand it, you have considerable upset with our current president, Mr. Obama, and I think it would really be good for you to trace some of the grounding principles on which you form your view of the world and your view of things politically and socially and culturally, and then maybe we could get into a discussion of some of that, the way you see the world, that gives you such a strong animosity, if that's the right word, or at least abhorrence even, of the current administration, the current state of things in the United States of America. But maybe you could kick it off somewhere there to pick up the threads of what forms your way of seeing the world.
Yeah, I refer to him as Bush 4.
Okay. Oh, Bush 4.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, the New World Order. New World Economic Order.
New World Order Economic, okay.
Which was coined by Bush 1.
Okay.
Who was assigned to keep an eye as a CIA head on Reagan, the Knight of Malta Reagan, who opened up diplomatic relations for the first time since the assassination of Lincoln. Reagan
with Russia?
The Vatican.
With the Vatican. Okay.
Right.
See, there's a lot of things.
Who was responsible for the death of Lincoln.
A lot of things you're tying together there. A whole bunch of patterns there. Maybe you could put it.
Well, this is all court admissible evidence. John Surratt's trial, which was run by Georgetown, and when they brought him back from the Vatican, he was a Swiss guard, and was being hidden by the Vatican so that the real story of the assassination of Lincoln wouldn't come out. But finally, they brought him back, and of course. We had no diplomatic relations with the Vatican until Knight of Malta Reagan came into office.
Knight of Malta Reagan. You seem to have a brief, if that's the right term, against a couple of things. You set me straight, right? The Jesuits and also the Knights of Malta. Well, and I'm trying to get a fix of where your philosophy hangs, and upon what principles and views.
I'm an Eagle Scout.
You're an Eagle Scout?
Right.
Are you truly? Were you truly an Eagle Scout, really? I got thrown out of the Scouts, you know.
Well, you got to have this. I was a second generation Boy Scout.
Okay.
My father was only a Life Scout.
Okay.
And his father was a big-time Mason.
Okay.
And the Masons had changed their bylaws where the father, when the son turned 21 was no longer allowed to ask the son to join the Masons.
Huh, okay.
So that was a way in which the Masonic order was tumbled in within itself because they couldn't continue the continuity of the family's relationship to the Masonic order. So a very important angle on things. But I'm an Eagle Scout, and my parents, I think, as a result of their alienation from Masonic traditions, became fellow travelers in the 30s.
Fellow travelers, of the left-wing communism,
not liberals, communists. Big difference.
Right. and right. You're very vociferously always have been anti-communist.
I've been an Eagle Scout.
Eagle Scout. What does that connote beyond the fact that you were
God, country, and family.
God, country, and family.
Right.
Okay, right.
And I think it's until the onslaught against it it started in the 50s. I think it was the only bulwark against the tendencies of collectivism, and that's really what there's a battle between individual rights versus collectivism.
Now we're getting down to it. Right. It's against collectivism and individual rights, and you're on the side of individual rights and liberty.
Right.
Okay, that's right. There would probably be more, if there was a party, you would probably be more comfortable in the Republican Party than the Democratic
Republican
Party. Okay,
because they have bylaws, and of course nobody lives by them, but I live by the bylaws, which are the
bylaws of the
very
Republican
clear, black
Party?
and white, very clear. And by and large, 90% of it I agree with.
Okay. Have you read the bylaws of the Democratic Party?
properly reflected in the present usurper in government.
The one, Mr. Obama. That's what we wanted to get at, because you're on that thing. So, have you always been in that camp? Sometimes people change from.
I'm not an academic.
No. Okay.
I always felt that our education system had been hijacked, and that
Horace Mann, or
I don't know. Again, I believe that individualism and the right for an individual to have to have a relationship with God, so to speak, is as separate from the collectives bowing to the universal Catholic notion of the God, which is no different than that of Islam, no different than that of the higher esoteric levels of Freemasonry, and that I'm
also the what is it? The Jesuits are there.
Well, the Jesuits, they're a military order that was put together by Loyola, who was born at the time of the Columbus. Columbus was in queue to get his his measly little ships to go and carry out the looking for the spice route. But that Loyola is a Basque. His brother, his older brother, was with Columbus.
They were up in France for a while, I think.
Well, he was a mercenary and plied his trade for hire.
Okay.
But the Jesuits and their spiritual exercises, which he developed, are at the heart of the sword arm of the Catholic Church.
Sword arm of the Catholic Church. So the Vatican is also. Could I ask you something just sort of economic? Would you have cottoned on to Ayn Rand or objectivism?
Ayn Rand was an interesting person. She was very much connected. She was very much in relation to the Illuminati, and she knew what was afoot there, the very high levels of Illuminism.
Okay, that's thank you. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
But that the Illuminati, being a real organization set up by Adam Weishaupt, who was a Jesuit-trained fellow who, after the Jesuits were banned from the world in 1773, in conjunction with Frederick the Great of Prussia.
Okay, 1770. They were banned.
They were banned from the world.
From the world. What does that
mean?
By
bull. Bull forever.
By papal bull.
Papal bull. They were banned from the world, and.
I didn't know that. Okay, yeah.
Very important. That's the only reason the American Revolution actually came off, or else it would have ended up looking like the French Revolution.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. Why were they banned? What was the reason for the papal bull, and what was it about them that?
Well, they were commissioned by the Pope to destroy heresy. In the military sense, to destroy all Protestant heresy and all obstinate heretics like the liberal Catholics here in the United States. They should be scared to death right now because they're on the chopping block. They're the first to go, the liberal Catholics in this country.
Okay, I'm trying to get a view of the universe that is one that informs your view of things, and it seems to be so. Ayn Rand and individualism are very
Atlas
important.
Shrugged. She was quite clear on the relationship of the individual to government, and she really knew what was going on. Unfortunately, she was sleeping with the wrong people, as far as I'm concerned.
Ayn Rand.
Yes.
Brandon, or
I know that her boyfriend, across the covers, was very much connected to the high levels of Freemasonry.
Oh, okay. And, see, you've got a lot of connections there that form a pattern in your mind that it's a little hard for me to get the pattern recognition between all those different things. And but it's a very important kind of thing, and it's a basis of much of the opposition to the current situation in the United States of America.
Progressivism,
or in the world, progressivism in general.
Right, which is the collective. It's fundamentally what we know with Beatrice and Sidney Webb. You know, the Fabian Society in the turn of the at this very time that your grandfather we spoke of at the beginning. Was around, in that they had a great deal of influence on the Transcendental Movement.
Okay.
In which basically the
Emerson.
Well, Emerson was an interesting fellow, but he his writings are wonderful.
Oh, yeah, he can write like an angel. Yeah.
But the idea that there is no,
go ahead.
there is no elite. There can be only an elite formed in order to maintain control and over the general population, which is uneducable and unable to direct their own existence, so that they must be guided in a sort of fascism with a democratic face sort of way. Which
I heard you use the term Illuminati. I've heard that. I've always sort of just associated it with the Bilderberg or the Trilaterals or something like that.
Bilderberg was the name of the hotel that they stayed in. It was started by the Knights of Malta. The Knight of Malta created. The Knights of Malta are the collective business arm of the Vatican. Of the Vatican.
Okay.
There was the Templars. It was the Templars, and with the death of de Molay and the banning of the Templars to the monastic Trappist order and the Cistercian order were then basically put back in the bottle. They no longer controlled the business of the Vatican.
Thomas Merton was a Trappist, was he? I think.
I'm new to this. In the last 2 years, you're a scholar.
I'm not.
You've got a doctorate. You've got a doctorate.
Well, whatever.
Your general knowledge is far beyond me in many senses. So I'm sort of somebody who is. What I'm saying I'm doing, and I'm not
thinking about it.
I'm living it.
Yeah, right. Okay, that's good. That's but there's a lot of patterns here. You got the Knights of Columbia, you got the Vatican, you got the
Nelson Malta, right?
And so you got a view of the universe or something, and your core principles revolve around the importance of respect for the individual.
Absolutely.
Rather than the collective.
The Declaration of Independence.
Okay.
Unalienable rights. A collective doesn't have unalienable rights. Only the individual can only be had from God. I'm not a Christian either.
You're not.
I'm not a Christian.
Are you a deist or are you a what?
I was raised until I became an Eagle Scout.
Yes.
I had never been in a church.
Okay.
So the point is, my parents were fellow travelers.
Oh, they were. Oh, I see. Okay. And you were raised in that kind of a family, a progressive left-wing family.
Communist. No,
communist.
Progressive is a buzzword.
It's a word we should understand.
It's a terrible discussion of things. And
what is it? Just a
modernism where they connected off. Progressives are best connected to the
liberal.
Liberals are
too
just,
easy. Huh?
Liberals are too. They're the rose-colored glass people.
Love me, love me.
It's the New Age movement.
They had the song "Love Me,
New Age
love
movement
me,
stuff.
I'm a liberal." Do you remember that song?
It's like having too much sugar.
Okay, you don't like that, right? No.
Liberals are not. Liberals are the basis for the entire fascist movement.
That's something. Okay,
Hitler was a progressive. He talked about nothing but change. Mussolini talked about change.
Okay.
With the business arm of the Catholic Church, which was given the reparation of the Lateran Treaty in 1928, where Mussolini created a bank, the Vatican Bank, and they got 90+ million of real money reparations for what Manzini and Garibaldi and King Emmanuel had taken away, and that the Jesuits kept on killing the Emmanuels. But nonetheless, as Emmanuel said, he says, "Well, I've got temporal power; you can have spiritual power." And that's
right.
And the Pope, of course, wanted temporal power. That's the whole point of the Jesuits. The Jesuits are there to smash under the Council of Trent the Protestant Reformation.
Okay, that is
to sacrifice in a Holocaust at the stake in fly ash.
I don't know what that means in fly.
Burn them.
Burn them.
Sacrifice, animal sacrifice. A heretic is an animal. If you're not in the church, if you're not, there is no salvation outside the church.
Do you think Luther or the Protestant movement had to do with asserting individuality against the collective capitalist?
What Luther said. I mean,
so you would be a supporter of Luther?
No.
Or no? Okay.
No.
I'm trying to get the people you support. Ayn Rand, yeah.
Yeah, Luther was an unhappy Catholic.
Okay.
Unhappy. There are very few true unhappy Catholics today, which are Protestants. They've given up the ghost. They've become liberals, and they're part of the whole New Age movement through the brainwashing of the Vatican II. which
Vatican
is
II, yeah, right. Okay, yeah.
the Desjardins structure.
Teilhard de Chardin.
Right.
Yeah.
His thinking was totally incorporated into Vatican II. That's what it is. The Knights of Malta adopt and protect in a very formative way the teachings of Desjardins.
Yeah, right.
And Opus Dei is an extension of that process that started in the early 50s.
Oh, it is. I didn't realize that. Yeah. So
Five of our Supreme Court justices, Opus Dei.
Really? Is that
Louis
right?
Freeh, Hansen, the traitor who ran the counterintelligence operations for the FBI, who was arrested for 25 years of treason, who is now serving a prison sentence. Opus Dei. They're a very treacherous organization which is spreading the collective.
I was raised on and had great admiration for Teilhard de Chardin. And the phenomenon
I have great
of man,
respect for
and
him.
The concept of convergence and understanding technology. He discovered Peking man, I think. He was a paleontologist.
He was first
too.
a nuclear physicist.
Okay.
That was his training as a nuclear physicist.
Yeah.
He was right there.
I presume you've read the phenomenon of man.
Look, in the same way as if we go into the Wilson administration and whether or not the United States would get into World War I, it took a long time to create World War I. It was a lot of expenditure of money, a collapse of the monetary system.
Yeah, we were just looking for the photograph, iconic photograph of the shooting in Sarajevo. Sarajevo is a Muslim word for fortress. I didn't know that, or it's derived from that. But he was shot, and it was an iconic photograph of that. And I think Barbara Tuchman, did you ever read the Guns of August?
Guns of August,
how unlikely it was those alliances would turn into such a horrific
He had traitors within his own security staff.
Okay, and Archduke.
Right. It was just happenstance that the assassins were where they were. They were on their way home.
Things happen like that, yeah.
They were on their way home, and if in fact they changed the route. They were waiting at the route location that they were told to be at.
Right.
And the route changed, and in fact, they were on their way home and shot him right there at that point.
Like the Daily Plaza?
No, that was...
That's another kettle of fish, right?
No, that was a slaughter which was done by the Vatican also.
You do? Okay, so you've got a take on things that's very interesting. And
I'm a pretty sour person.
You're pretty sour about the state of affairs, right? Yeah, and things are getting worse or better through time. If we go back
when I say to you...
Let's say 500 years. Are things getting better? Is there any progress in terms of fulfilling man's function?
Well, it depends what side you're on. The Jesuits...
No, but on your side, I mean.
Oh, my side. Well, I can only speak from my birth.
Yeah.
But, from at least a family history, I can speak from the Revolution. My family was in the Revolution.
Oh, really? Okay. You would have been hung by the yardarm if they hadn't succeeded.
I was definitely
a traitor to the
King George. I inherit that tradition
King George
as a revolutionary.
King George called George Washington a terrorist, I do believe, yeah.
Yeah, and so that Americans given up. They don't understand the revolution. They have no sense of history.
You think, really? Yeah.
No. Don't you? Ignorance is just overwhelming.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. And they've backed off from the principles that informed the founding fathers?
Well, I consider most Americans, except for 5% on either side of the population, are just big road bump. They're in the way of getting things finalized, and they're unfortunately through the media just a terrible, a drain and destructive force in this country. The ignorance is just overwhelming.
Okay. And the 5% on each side of
they know what's going on.
Well, the 5% know what's going on. Some would be 5. You'd be part of a 5%, I presume, and then there'd be part of the 5% would be what, the left-wing progressive.
Well, I don't get into left and right. That's phony.
Okay,
that's phony.
Okay.
It's the collective versus the
individual.
And that's
liberty.
As simple as it gets. And I am a bottom-up person, just like Carl. And
that's Carl Pearson.
Right.
That we
so
know,
I am an individual with a sense of God, country, and family, and I know that a government must be there to protect my rights, which are unalienable, and that the other side are at full tilt to take away my rights, and that everybody in the middle is just they're they're just cattle and chattel. They're slaves to their own mentality.
Slaves to their own, and followers.
I don't
There's some people.
I don't think they're even followers.
Is there within the human society real leaders, or are we all part of a thing? Or leaders.
The collective
spiritual leaders.
The collective
intellectual leaders. We've had cultural leaders. Are there any leaders? Because the individual
the Pope right now is considered the only leader of any value to a vast majority in the middle, and that
the Catholic Church. Yeah.
The Pope. The Catholic Church is just it is the pap for the vast majority of walking zombies.
What about on the Protestant side? Then we had Luther.
There aren't any Protestants left.
There are no Protestants
left. They've been
absorbed.
They've been absorbed into the New Age movement.
To the New Age.
Right.
New Age movement. That would be Chardin.
Vatican II.
Vatican II and Chardin, and the sense of things moving in that
Gaia and all that business.
And who are we've mentioned a couple people, if I may. I appreciate it very. I'm trying to understand. We've mentioned Ayn Rand, Bill Buckley, the conservative
He was a Knight of
movement.
Malta. He was a Knight of Malta, and very much part of the collective.
He's part of the collective. No, okay, then I guess maybe what I ask you: who in the world can we pay attention to in terms to get a good philosophical moorings about the important principles that operate within the universe, and who would it be? So far I've heard Ayn Rand.
Are you looking for leaders? She's dead.
Yes. No, I'm looking for sources of inspiration.
Our documents, our founding documents.
You mean the founding fathers? You mean the Constitutional Convention and that?
Very few people read original writings.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
But our founding documents, the Declaration of Independence, the first draft of the Declaration of Independence, in which 25% of it was carved out by John Carroll, who was the Bishop of the Americas. And that,
you mean the original draft that Jefferson came up with?
Right. They carved out 25% of that.
They took out property, didn't they?
They took out any mention of King George, George's relationship to the slave trade and working with the Barbary pirates. And that John Carroll and Charles Carroll made it quite clear that you could not have what Jefferson wanted to do, since he had gone to school with Charles Carroll and John Carroll, who was the top Jesuit in the country.
Jesuits again, yeah.
Can't get away from them.
You can't. Okay.
No, that's
There's a you got let me hear it. I'll hold it up.
There's a good book which
I'm not sure which camera is robotic, but maybe you could come in. This one is not. So maybe the central camera. You could come in. Give them time to come in on it. Yeah, maybe they can come in on it with the central camera. It's robotic. Go ahead, talk to the book. We're holding it up.
It gives a good overview of the Council of Trent and the relationship of the Protestant Reformation to that of the interest of the Vatican, and that the battle between the two, and certainly the role of the Jesuits as the military order to destroy the Protestants, and how that Europe was turned in through the 30 Years' War, and the slaughters, the awful slaughters that were carried on by the Catholics against the Protestants.
And vice versa? Well,
look,
this is a book called The Grand Design.
Right, to be a Christian,
New World Order, 666, that is the sign of the beast. They
you know what that is. You know what 666 came from,
Well, that's the sign of the beast. I don't know
where
it came from.
It's, if you study if you study the Masonic principles, if you add up the tens of all of the points on the compass of 360 degrees, it adds up to 666.
Is that where it comes from?
Right. You know that the other cultures had a different calendar or different compass.
Sure did.
They had a 400-degree compass.
Yeah.
There were other. You can make up any compass structure you want, but 360 was a Masonic structure, and 666 is the addition of all of the points.
Does your mind go to things like good and evil, and there's good in the universe and evil in the universe, or how? I can't quite understand it. And where does it fit in politically? You would be Republican, I presume, right?
Well, look.
If we get into politics, so you seem to think that that's a cover or a thing that's put out, a chimera that's put out in the society. And so far we got Ayn Rand.
Well, you brought up Ayn Rand.
No, I did,
wouldn't
but
have brought,
I'm-
I wouldn't
what-
have. She's, I guess, a point of reference for the libertarians. I'm not libertarian.
You're not
at all.
a libertarian. Okay.
No,
I'm
no.
trying to pin you down.
No, I
Chris.
can't be pinned down.
You can't be pinned down. Okay, well then it's
I'm at war.
You're at war with.
I'm at war with the only ones worthy of going to war against, and that's the Jesuits.
That's the Jesuits.
I want to be known. I want to be known by my enemy, and they're worthy.
Okay.
A very worthy enemy.
The Jesuits.
You bet.
Yeah. Okay.
And certainly their involvement in both the formation or the abortion of this country. We know we should never had a revolution. Absolutely never.
We should not have had a revolution against King
Jefferson.
George?
Against King George, yes.
Yes.
Because he was an imposter working with the Vatican, profiteering with the Vatican on slavery. Wherein at the same time, the Parliament, Edmund Burke, was very instrumental in getting rid of slavery as it relates to England, and in '75.
So he's somebody you'd celebrate, Burke.
Burke was a very intelligent person.
Right,
he understood what had to be done, and both he and Franklin.
Nothing required for the triumph of evil for good people to do nothing.
Thank you.
You like that quote? Okay, we get some quotes you like, right? To
I'm not into quotes.
No, you're not into quotes either. Okay. Yeah.
I'm into action.
Oh,
and
okay.
certainly, the thing with Jefferson is that he, in the service of God, he was an evil man in the service of God, so to speak. You know, he represented the Calvinist structure in the South, and he represented the planters, and he understood that the planters wanted to also stay with the Parliament. They wanted to stop the importation of slaves, as you saw later in the Constitution in section, I think it was section 9, in which all importation of slavery would have to stop by 1809, right? Well, Jefferson wanted to stop it now so that they could firm up the relationship to Parliament and have Parliament firm up its relationship with colonies against King George, to throw off King George, who was running slavery and profiteering in that sense, with the Jesuits, who were running the slavery through Maryland.
To the Jesuits. The Jesuits
were running slavery.
Jesuits are a real bête noire in your perception. It seems
there's no one else around.
No one else around. That's
Nobody.
something worth spelling out, and we don't want to lose track with the fact that we're in the year 2009.
There's 36,000 Jesuits globally.
Okay,
spell
it out.
They're like the Green Berets.
Green Berets, okay.
Right. If there were one man, all of the Western Hemisphere who was a Jesuit, his job would be to control the hemisphere. One man.
I'm trying to understand. It sounds like a really expanded, egoistic power trip of
it's the spiritual exercises of Loyola. You want to capture someone's soul in a satanic sense, in order to gain their power. You want to sacrifice them in a pagan sense in order to gain their internal heat and energy and their power, and to centralize that and to enslave them spiritually first,
and what becomes
to break their soul, to break their faith, the hope
of the people, the individual people that make up the society.
There are no individuals.
No, but you were saying
there are no individuals in their mind. They're just animals who are not part of the church.
No, but in your mind there are individuals, and you're an individual.
Absolutely,
you're an Eagle Scout, right? And everything so like that. But they, in a certain sense, represent evil. In your mind, a concentration of evil.
They represent the fighting force for the consolidation of the temporal power of the Pope under their control. The Pope toes the line.
There was a time when there was no Catholic Church at all before Constantine.
Well,
there was no. There was.
If you go back to the Council of Nicaea, you go back to to 150 A.D., in which Jordan Maxwell, this big 33-level Mason, talks about how supposedly the followers, the apostles of Christ, essentially stole the Babylonian mystery religion into the Christian church.
The Babylonian mystery religion, is that Zoroastrianism?
Right,
or
that
it is.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there was Mithra before there was Zoroaster.
Right, it's the same.
Out of the Vatican Hill,
Persia.
Yeah, that's right. And that goes back. That's pre-Abraham. And that goes
that's right.
back, and the Vatican Hill, or the Hill of Vatican or something, was a temple to Mithra in pre-Constantine Rome.
Right, everything was
and a lot of the military leaders of Rome were worshippers of Mithra.
There you go.
And that was the beginning of monotheism. I believe before Abraham.
Well,
over in Ur.
Monotheism certainly, see, I'm going back to that view of things, which is, I think, best you've seen Zeitgeist, the movie Zeitgeist?
Well, I'm not sure. I have. Yes, I have.
Well,
I've seen. There's also a Zeitgeist movement that
is the epitome of the New Age movement, saying that Christ, in fact, was just merely a smearing together of the Trinity and all that business, smearing together of the old mystery religions.
There are two Zeitgeists that I have. There's a young man a regulatory young man who recently passed, who was very much directing his ire at the Federal Reserve System. Yeah. That was one Zeitgeist. And there's another one called the Zeitgeist Movement, a fellow down in Florida.
Yes.
Is that the one you're referring to, the Zeitgeist Movement? Because they pick up on Chardin. And they pick up on transformation.
Right, well, that's what it's all
about. And convergence.
Right.
And everything,
D. Chardin didn't do things on his own. He was very much coordinated. And that, look, Catholicism has nothing to do with Christianity at all. Nothing.
Okay.
Absolutely nothing.
What does it have to do with?
With the pagan mystery religions.
Okay.
All of it.
Okay.
And that Rome had to, because it was dealing with its slave policy, it was dealing with its various dissolution, and it was in conflict with the Constantine, who in the early 300s, where his brother essentially was running, the two-headed eagle. His brother ran Rome, and he was running Constantinople. But Rome was always dealing with absorbing slaves, and it's being overrun by pagan.
Gibbon said that contributed to its downfall.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they never could afford to adopt Christianity, and they had to essentially, because they had too much to lose in their own mind in becoming Christians, and so all the trappings of the Catholic Church are non-Christian, all of it.
That's an interesting take. Yeah. Okay.
Well, since I was on your show a year ago,
was it then? Yeah.
Yeah, it was June of last year.
Okay.
Because I'm not a Christian, and I wanted to get a balanced view of what Christianity is, and certainly most of what you hear in the charismatic Protestant remnants are just gobbledygook and has nothing to do with Christianity. It has to do with D. Chardin. So that,
that's interesting, isn't it? Because most people aren't even familiar with Chardin. I think
No,
but
see,
in the general society,
I got involved because I was doing research.
I was very
on
involved
zoning. I was doing zoning research and in making money doing zoning research in upstate New York, and certainly the New York province of the Society of Jesus was very active in land speculation in the after World War II. But so I became familiar with D. Chardin only through that process of looking at original records of land transfers and that sort of thing. And that, of course, I bring to it my Eagle Scout sort of outlook, which is strange, in order to be an Eagle Scout, you've got to go to church for a year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was the biggest problem. So I went to a Unitarian church, which was like the communist church.
You went to a Unitarian would be very Chardin. They'd be welcoming of Chardin. You'd have no problem there.
So anyway, I got signed off.
You're very familiar talking about upstate that he's buried in Poughkeepsie, New York, Chardin.
He's buried in St. Andrews near Hyde Park. Right.
That's right. He's buried in that. It used to be a monastery, and now it's the Culinary Institute of America.
That was the
and they preserved the place where he is buried. I had a friend of mine who used to be very advocating of him, and he used to go there either on his birth or death date. I'm not sure which to do as kind of ceremony and celebration of the man, which I don't suppose you particularly want to participate in.
No, listen, I'm more interested in what he did and what he was, because
he's a giant philosopher.
Well, I've been looking at his nuclear physics background. And I don't want to get into that. I see you have Richard Garwin on.
Garwin's a real good guy.
So I watched that one interview with Garwin, which he was the man who put the pellets.
The design together, yeah.
But he was the
in
one
Chicago.
he was the one on the Enola Gay who put the pellets into the bomb, and they made a dirty bomb. And they dropped it over Hiroshima. So.
Well, okay, I don't know that. He was very involved with, and he got involved with Teller and everything. But listen, one thing you're talking, you've got this view of things that's very interesting, and also is part of an opposition to things current. You're very strongly against, let's say, the whole thing that Mr. Obama and the Democratic Party, the recent election that happened, is disastrous. You use the term brown shirts, fascism, for what it is, and there is such a strong
the AmeriCorps operation are the brown shirts.
AmeriCorps, okay, he's
and
expanded
certainly the
that,
Inspector General had uncovered terrible ripping off of taxpayers' monies, and he was shown the door within 10 minutes as soon as he filed a complaint or an intent for further discovery on one of Obama's friends, who was an official whose relationship to the city he is involved with, because he had ripped off money, was the city was prohibited from getting any further funds. So that, of course, Obama, who's corrupt as the day is long, intervened on that.
You see, you have a very strong animus against Obama.
Not at all.
No, you don't. You don't.
Not at all. No, but Barry Soetoro is the least known man in the country.
I beg your pardon?
Barry Soetoro.
I don't know that name.
That's his name.
Oh, that's his. I don't understand.
Right.
What do you mean?
He was adopted by Lolo Soetoro after his mother, his purported mother, married, divorced Obama Sr. in '64 and married shortly thereafter Lolo Soetoro, who was also going to the university.
Is that the guy in Thailand or someplace out in the
Indonesia.
East? Indonesia, right,
where in that Obama, in Islam, the religion of the father passes from the father to the children, so that Obama by birth was a Muslim, and he remains a Muslim. And his upbringing in the madrasa in Indonesia was very interestingly portrayed when he went to Saudi Arabia and spoke to the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, and then
spoke to Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. Yeah, he did speak to them directly. I mean, whoever that representative is.
That's who he made the speech in front of.
And you also have an opinion. You're one of those that is of the opinion that he is not legitimately our president because he wasn't born.
He's a usurper.
But you believe that, and you think that is the fact. And
no, it's a matter of fact. It's a matter of fact.
And
because
you're
father,
pressing that.
His father
and you realize, Chris, that you take all kinds of flack for being a flake and bringing that up, and everybody's trying to brush it off.
I could care less.
I know. I imagine that would be the case.
Again,
but you're one of those that is really vehemently against
I'm the only one in Washington, D.C. right now with 3 cases.
3 cases.
Three cases in federal court. And that it's a fact, by his own admission, that his father was governed by British law as a citizen of the United Kingdom at his birth. Therefore, he's got a dual allegiance at birth. And that he then admits in April of last year in the resolution on whether or not this jack-in-the-box McCain, who was born in the Republic of Panama, of 2 citizens, whether or not he was entitled to run in the New Hampshire campaign, or the New Hampshire primaries in January of last year. And that Obama himself votes in the Senate resolution of the Senate saying that as long as you have 2 citizens at birth, you are a natural-born citizen. So you must
voted,
have 2 citizens.
You voted in the presidential election for John McCain as a Republican.
I voted
because you seem to be so. There would be nobody you could vote for.
McCain was a Manchurian candidate whose candidacy was run by the Knights of Malta.
And you voted for him.
I voted for him specifically because he's a known quantity. You can twist his tail anytime you want because he's psychologically unstable, and that I know him backwards and forwards. My friend Bob Dornan, who I refer to as the
is that California?
Bob was running against Anita Sanchez.
But
in 96.
he was a figure in the Congress, wasn't he?
He was
from California.
He was a very important figure.
Very conservative.
Nah, he was another
was he-
God, country, and family man. That's what he and
God,
I-
country, like
and that-
progressives are going to distrust God, country, and family.
Exactly.
Yes,
So that's
right.
what
Yeah.
separates us.
Yeah.
see?
Okay.
So that's the way to understand
right.
me.
Okay. Right.
If you believe in God, country, and family,
Yeah.
you're with me.
Right.
So-
Right.
and it has nothing to do with left, right, up, down, in, and out. In other words, if you want to be a member of the collective, you give up
Call the United States
give up your spirit, give up your faith, give up your hope. You become a slave to the collective, and it's that simple.
And you think that's where we're trending under Obama's leadership?
We're there. We're well
Yeah.
beyond it.
Yeah.
He's Bush 4.
Are we too far gone to be able
No,
to
never
retrieve?
too
Or
far.
you still think there's a possibility of getting to the right roots of things and everything? And where is it? And isn't there a lot of people who have this very strong animus?
They're brainwashed.
No, I'm talking about the people like yourself who have this really strong animus against what's going on in this country under the
I don't worry
administration
about them.
of. No, I know you don't, but I'm
They're
just
worried
saying.
about where he was born. I don't care where he's born.
Okay.
Don't care.
Okay.
The fact is,
Yeah.
and I've got a quo warranto case before a federal judge right now. Obama had an American citizen and a British citizen at birth, which means that he has a dual allegiance at birth. It means he can't be president. Period.
Well, okay, I don't know the
He admitted to
detail.
that fact. That's a fact, and that's what's before the court. I don't care
know.
whether he was born in Hawaii.
Yeah, or
I don't care
Kenya.
whether he was born in Seattle. I don't care whether he was born in Mombasa. I don't care whether he was born, as they say, in some embassy or some manger. I could care less.
Manger.
I could care
Yeah,
less.
yeah,
He is the same mentality as Adolf Hitler, the same family background,
Well,
the same frailties.
What
His
made-
ability to sway a crowd is exactly the same.
He's silver tongued.
He uses hypnosis techniques.
He's a good orator.
He
So
is a
Hitler.
progressive.
Hitler was a good
He's
orator.
a progressive, just like Hitler, who ran around as an environmentalist,
You
protecting
see-
the environment.
You see Hitler as a progressive.
He is absolutely a progressive.
Adolf Hitler, the head of
Adolf Hitler
fascism.
worked with the eugenics movement before he came
Yeah,
into office. The
right.
eugenics movement happened
Chamberlain.
here.
There was a guy
It
named
happened here.
Yeah.
Teddy Roosevelt, all the progressives were eugenicists.
Wasn't there a guy named Chamberlain that was very not Naval Chamberlain?
well,
There was
there's
another
a-
Chamberlain who was
there was a
part of the
Chamberlain in
eugenics
Pumpkin
movement.
Papers, but,
but there was a Chamberlain involved. Chamberlain, not the one.
Rosenberg was the man who was the go-between between progressive movement here in the 20s and in what became Nazi Germany. And there was the eugenics movement is everything that Obama is. He's a Nazi in his mentality. And actually the Nazis became eugenicists. There was you don't call the Nazis eugenicists. You call them followers of the eugenic movement, which started here.
I know
And
that.
that's the progressive movement.
No, you saw that as the
I
progressive.
know that to be a progressive
Okay.
movement.
Usually fascism is that he was, and Mussolini is associated with what would be
It's
a right
collectivism.
wing.
It's collectivism.
Right wing
No,
collectivism.
no such thing as
No
left and
such
right.
right.
No such thing.
Right wing, left wing doesn't
No
matter.
such thing.
What does matter in terms of a dialectic?
The Knights of Malta, again, after the Templars were put in the monastery under the control, then thereafter, the Knights of Malta, they were a competing military order, right? The Knights of Malta became the military collective arm, business arm of the Vatican. They ran the business of the Vatican.
So the
Collectively.
The locus of, I don't want to use the word loosely, evil, is the Vatican.
I'm not, I don't use the word evil.
You don't use the word
I do
evil.
not
No.
use the word evil
Okay.
loosely.
Okay, no, I understand.
And certainly wickedness is something which has a meaning to it.
Yeah,
But
it's a little short of evil, I think.
well, but it
You
has
got a wicked humor.
right.
Or wicked
Just
good
like
humor.
molestation.
Yeah.
The word molest
Yeah.
is not the same as pederasty. You know, they keep on confusing the
Yeah,
two.
right.
Pederasty is love. Molestation is stealing the spirit and the soul. See?
Okay,
That's the stealing of the soul. That's a spiritual issue.
Uh-huh.
So, listen, I believe that the issue of the progressive movement
Yeah.
is well documented historically in this country, and that from starting with the abolitionist movement, which is the progressive movement, through McClellan of New York. New York is the sort of the center of the progressive
The
movement.
abolitionist movement of
Absolutely.
slavery.
John Brown, all that business. yeah.
No, but the abolition of chattel slavery was against the natural order? Or I don't understand. How could you be against abolition of slavery? Or I don't. It's hard to understand.
Well, again, if we
what
go back
you're
to the
thinking.
discussion of the fundamental documents, the Declaration
Now,
of
the
Independence.
fundamental documents are
Declaration
not
of
it's not scriptures for you. It's not
No,
Jesus.
I don't know anything about the Bible.
All right,
I'm
it's
a
not-
dummy when it comes to that.
It's down to the fact that in 1776 we had an incredibly enlightened group of people who set down standards that are good in terms of the way the whole universe is set
The
up.
individual.
The individual, and it gave credence to the individual. Is
Right,
that and that
right.
and that's the only
Right.
time, only representation of that ever in the history of the world?
That I can think of.
Okay, so you're very, very tied into the importance, the unique importance in the evolution of consciousness for the United States Revolution made in and Declaration of Independence
And they knew what they were doing.
1776.
Then they were not
Okay.
happy.
Okay.
You know, they were not happy. Again, John Carroll and Charles Carroll had them leave the importation of slavery in so that we were split from the Parliament.
Yeah. Do you
When we
think
were
it-
split
yeah.
for the Parliament, we
Yeah.
were lost.
Yeah.
The whole question of the
Yeah.
Council, the Council Trent was to destroy the Protestant structure and to restore temporal power to the Pope internationally.
So you're back
world
to the
power.
division between, I don't know, Henry
Henry VIII essentially said,
Henry
Henry
VIII
VIII essentially closed all the monasteries. He said, I don't want the scholastic
He had to marry-
center of the church any longer to be here. And
Yeah, so
he
we've
took all the monasteries
We've
away.
had that Protestant Catholic thing, and you've got a real brief against the Catholic collective.
The collective.
Rather than the why don't your foundational
There is no
principles
Protestant faith anymore.
Why don't your foundational principles go back to Luther and put it, you know,
Luther
to the
was a
Protestant-
Catholic priest
Yeah, I
who
know.
died in his sleep many years after, you know, he was not.
But he was a founder of the Protestant movement.
He
You
was a
seem
fr-
to be grounded
he-
in the Protestant
he-
view
he-
of things.
Look, the Jesuits will burn Bibles at any moment, any chance.
Okay.
The Bible is the enemy of the Catholic Church. They mediate everything they do through Catholic doctrine,
was a hell
not
of
the
a
Bible.
thing.
Not the Bible.
Gutenberg was really
They burned the Bible. Thomas Aquinas, Thomas More burned the Bible. You know, the supposed
So what?
great
Yeah,
thinker.
but what I'm asking you is, why don't your founding principles that give you a sense of the universe and everything like that go back to Luther or to the founders
look,
of the Protestant
No,
against the
let's go back to
collectivist-
Christ. Let's go back to Christ.
Well,
You know,
you're
as
gonna
I
go back to
I
Christ,
spent
okay.
4 days in a monastery, a Russian Orthodox monastery.
Okay.
And that I ate, slept, lived with the monks just to find out what they were doing up there. What are you guys doing up here anyway?
What kind of monks were they? I mean, it makes a difference.
Russian
doesn't it?
Orthodox monks.
Russian Orthodox. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Makes a
And
difference,
the true apostolic church.
yeah. Okay. What did you discover in the
Well,
4
I asked
days?
them, I says, well, what makes you a Christian? Right? And after a few days of discussing this, and certainly I boiled it down to, is that you don't kill somebody because they don't believe in what you believe in. That's what a Christian is. You can't find any Catholic who wouldn't kill you at an eye blink if you didn't believe, or, you know, there is no existence outside the church.
I mean, in the view of
There
some
is no
Catholics.
salvation outside of the Catholic Church.
That's a very pernicious view of the universe.
The heresies,
Yeah.
the Inquisition continues under a different name since 1907, and that the liberal Catholics, the Black Baptists are scheduled for death and sacrifice. Period.
And you
Including myself too, but certainly the first ones are the liberal Catholics,
Yeah.
who are the obstinate heretics.
Okay, you're doing things in your fight. It's a Sisyphus battle. You know,
Not at all. Not at all.
No, you don't feel that way.
Not
okay?
at
You
all.
feel empowered.
It's all downhill.
Oh, it's all downhill. Is it all over? Is there no point in doing? Is it all done?
I have,
there's no
I
reason
have-
to think about it.
I am
It's
now
all gone
fighting
to
the
hell.
law firm of Edward Bennett Williams.
Why fight if it's all over? I mean, why bother to fight if it's all over? I mean, you've lost. You've lost. Is that what you're saying?
No,
Or the good forces of good in the universe have lost hopelessly
the individual-
to the forces of evil? Is that what you're trying to say?
If I should die tomorrow, yes.
all would be lost. I see.
Right, for me.
Yeah, right.
But and certainly for my family. Look, what Obama is doing
Yeah.
is what Sotoro is doing is quite scary stuff.
What's Sotoro?
That's his name.
Oh, Sotoro. I've not heard that name. I don't know.
He came in under an Indonesian passport to come back and live with his purported grandmother.
Well, that's a detail. I mean, that's something that's going to come out in the news, obviously.
No, the news is controlled by the Knights of Malta. They're the collective.
The news, the NBC and so forth are controlled, CNN
Fox,
and everything.
all of them.
They're all controlled by the Knights of Malta.
General Electric, all run by the Knights of Malta.
By the Knights of Malta. Now, there's a premise that would be worth advancing.
The Vatican Bank,
and showing evidence for.
When Mussolini set up the Vatican Bank with Lateran Treaty, giving 90+ million to the then Pope to create the Vatican Bank under the control of the Rothschilds. What occurred is that they had the Knights of Malta, Joseph Kennedy, etc., sitting in the stock market, collapse it through manipulating of margin calls. They collapsed it, and shortly thereafter, when everything was collapsed to a penny on the dollar, the Vatican used the 90 million to buy up our industry at penny on the dollar. Joseph Kennedy did that. And the Knights of Malta,
Kennedy, the father of John Kennedy.
Yes. They bought all our industry up at a penny on the dollar. The Federal Reserve then, under their control, the Knights of Malta's control, then collapsed. All banks at that point were under state law, under state governance, and under the clearinghouses within state control. There were no federal banks, none. And that the Federal Reserve, being a private bank with no reserve.
Since 1913.
Well, since the
Jekyll Island.
Jekyll Island, yeah, right. Yeah. But the point though is that, and that was put together and kept quiet on that island off of was South Carolina or whatever.
Jekyll Island.
Right. Yeah. So look, the Vatican Bank took over our steel industry. It took over all our industries, including IBM.
This can all be documented. You're making a decision.
Bernanke made a speech at the commemoration of Milton Friedman's. His wife was in the audience. This is after his death. Milton Friedman had essentially created he had reconstructed the events going into the crash of '29 and thereafter the crash of the banking industry. Bernanke admitted in this presentation 2 years ago that he admitted that by decreasing the availability of cash by 1/3, they were able to collapse all the state banks and cause the run on the banks and then take them over. And that Bernanke admitted that 2 years ago. And of course, Milton Friedman wrote about it as to whose fault was the '29 crash and it wasn't Smoot-Hawley, that garbage. That's a bunch of myth. So it was the collapse. It was the shrinking of the available cash flow by 1/3, which caused people to be starved for cash, and they had to run on their banks.
Do you like Milton Friedman as an economic
Milton Friedman
is that someone? We got Ian Rand.
Well, leave her out of it. The point is that
you want to leave everybody out. There's no one you want to associate
the Chicago
with.
School of Economics, when it comes down to it, is certainly under the sway of the Vatican. And that
they are also. So there's no light there either.
Look, the Pope came over April of last year. The Pope came over and made a speech, a 200-year commemoration for the conquering of the United States from the time that John Carroll, as the only bishop of the Americas, went to expand the number of the diocese to 3. Where he got 2 more bishops in, I think it's 1808, and that they now have 200 dioceses. And the Pope came over and said, we are now done, and that we're going to be carrying out the great chastisement. He made this speech to the American bishops in Maryland.
I thought you were going to talk about the grand chessboard by Zbigniew Brzezinski. I've heard you talk about him.
Brzezinski is a Knight of Malta. He is twisted.
A Knight of Malta. Would that be something you'd have a thing in your wallet? I am a Knight of Malta.
What I said to you is that the Carter was
It's good to know where to focus the animus. if there is an animus that one can be directed at in order to get
Edgar Allan Poe said, if you want to understand the universe, stand on the top of the mountain and spin around on your one foot as quickly as possible. That's how you do it. And the maelstrom, in the maelstrom.
In the maelstrom,
where he's watching everybody get sucked under because they're grabbing onto things. You know, you got to go with the flow.
Used to talk
you got to go with the flow.
And, Mr. McLuhan used to talk about that. The
Edgar Allan Poe really pissed off a lot of people by.
Did you like Edgar Allan Poe?
I think he's an intriguing character.
Once Upon a Midnight Dreary.
But certainly he was part of the intelligence community, the Sagamundi Society, and the people that were going around all the ports and paint the seascapes, showing where all the enforcements are, and that sort of thing.
We haven't got very much time. We've only got a couple of minutes left of this hour interview and everything. Are you generally, like if you say, are you optimistic, pessimistic for the human prospect?
I am the ultimate optimist.
You are an optimist for the human prospect within the evolution of broader affairs and universe. And where does the optimism come from in terms of the dire forces that are in control of the world's institutions and means of communicating and manipulating the public? You put your faith in the Boy Scouts of America, not the Boy Scouts of the world. The Boy Scouts of America, because they stand up for
God, country, and family.
God, country, and family.
Right.
I see.
I was very unhappy when they started lowering the difficulty of getting in to be an Eagle in the early '60s. But
I couldn't make it.
It's tough.
But
look,
did you go in the military?
I was in the military for 6 years.
Did you fit into the military? Did you?
I told you. I think I told you before. I was in the Air Weather Service, so I was always looking at. I was always interested in oceanography and geography.
And geography. You have
I wanted to be.
We
an
are both
oceanographer.
geographers.
Right,
and wasn't you told me Chardin was a geographer? I didn't realize.
He was a nuclear physicist first, and then he was a paleontologist.
Paleontologist.
But certainly, he as a top-level Mason, who was part of the whole search for.
Peking man or Java.
Yeah, well, that was to discover
China.
That was to discover the chauvinism of China. You know, that there was a whole thing going on with the Chinese who were looting in Manchuria at that point. But you know, he was involved with Hirohito's brother, who was essentially looting all the tombs.
With
Pedro Arrupe, another Basque.
Marshall McLuhan was really an interesting fellow, really wired in an interesting way. He used to quote James Joyce all the time. Loved James Joyce and Stream of Consciousness. And he said, in James Joyce's line is, history is a nightmare from which I'm attempting
last
to
time
awaken.
You said that was very funny.
I say it all the time.
Yeah,
how does that sit with you in terms of your, and if you say there's hope, because you've given a very dreary picture of the forces that are in control of the world, and that you know, it could be seen in negative terms. And since we have weapon systems and so forth that are so very destructive now, it's very hard to know from whence comes the optimism.
I'm reading another book right now.
Oh, from the other book.
The Loyolas and the Cabots, about the history.
Here's another one. We'll hold it up.
The history of
this is it.
Father Leonard Feeney, who had discovered that he was trying to. He had actually sued the Boston Catholic Church for heresy.
Yeah, okay.
And that he claimed that they were all a bunch of heretics, and what they were doing and what he was doing was proselytizing and trying to increase the membership in the Catholic Church, and he was threatened with excommunication. It said no Jew could become a Catholic. You know,
okay, so that's one of the
very powerful stuff. See, I've taken on the most interesting group of people, the Jesuits, in my court cases. And as such, I am defining spiritual injury in my court case, which is not easily determined, but certainly they, through Reagan's recognition, through diplomatic exchange.
Did you like Ronald
Reagan?
Reagan
was a Knight of Malta. He was an extension of that collective.
If you're a Knight of Malta, you're not in the good course.
You're in a collective.
You're in a collective. Well, it's a hard thing. I appreciate you're saying that you're an optimist.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And you're an optimist because it's a little hard to figure out where the optimism comes from.
I'm an applied Christian.
An applied Christian.
In other words, if it works, use it. And certainly, certainly what Christ was interested in is straightening out the problems with paganism.
There are a lot of problems. And we're there, and it's your pleasure as the Perceptions, Christopher Strunk. Thanks for coming in.
You bet.
No sense talking now, Chris.